Thank you. So my name is Rory Daly and welcome to part 2 of our LinkedIn Academy. So in the first part of this workshop, we looked at the very basics of creating your profile, of making sure that you're using keywords, making sure that your profile would be attractive to recruiters, and also then thinking about the differences between using LinkedIn and using a CV, and then the pluses and minuses for both. In today's session, we're going to think about LinkedIn slightly differently from two different aspects. One is about how recruiters use LinkedIn, because it's helpful for you when you're thinking about creating your LinkedIn profile to in the same way as you would when thinking about your CV or a cover letter. Think about the person that's reading your profile and what they're looking for. So looking at it from a recruiter's perspective will give you that insight and help you hopefully create an even better LinkedIn profile. And secondly, we'll think about how you then create, expand and develop an appropriate network for what you're trying to achieve from your use of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is used by many recruiters looking for talented students and graduates. They will be looking for particular things. So they will be using the advanced search filters to source their talent. So they're looking for people with, say, particular skills. So L'Oreal was an example we used there on the screen. They might be looking for people who are bilingual, including French. People like Apple might be looking for people with IT degrees, or IT related degrees, so they'll be using that kind of filter, as it were. Somebody like BNY Mellon might be looking to recruit specifically to, say, their Manchester office, so might use the search function to limit their search to the north of England for people who are more likely to be around Manchester or more likely to move to Manchester. The LinkedIn recruiter allows the employers to reach out to potential candidates. So one way in which the recruiters will use LinkedIn is to keep candidates warm. So they might do a search for suitable candidates, for instance, for their graduate scheme, and then contact suitable candidates and say, hi, our graduate scheme is going to open up in 2 months' time. I've been looking at your profile and you look like an ideal candidate for our graduate scheme. Just letting you know that it's going to open up in 2 months' time. And we look forward to you applying. And then they might send you another message in a month's time. Again, just to let you know that the scheme will open in a month's time, and maybe finding out if you had any questions you wanted to ask. So it's a really good way for recruiters to search for talent. And also it's a very cost-effective way as well, because just by using the advanced search filters, you can contact thousands of people very quickly and have a pool of candidates ready for any particular role that you're about to advertise. So the recruiters really like using LinkedIn. We had a look at from the LinkedIn data about what type of roles people were using. And as you can see, it was spread across lots and lots of different sectors. But as you might expect, there was an emphasis on computing and technology, but also the financial services, healthcare, human resources, marketing and advertising. So again, lots of recruiters using LinkedIn to try and attract the best talent. So this is just an example of looking at the dashboard from the point of view of a recruiter. So the recruiters will pay an advanced license to be able to use it to do recruitment. And as you can see, the example there, they've used the filter search to search for somebody with project management experience in the greater Chicago area. And then you could add one or more skills. So they might want a project manager in Chicago with good Microsoft project skills and management skills, for instance. And then they'll be able to search and to receive details of suitable candidates. So, for instance, if you look underneath the search, you can see that they looked for project managers with that criteria and came up with 6 new results. And they're also using it to uh, highlight people who may have been working with companies that they would be interested in recruiting from. You can see also just below on the right hand side that when they looked for enterprise relevance in Microsoft, they got 78 profiles. And again, really good way for those people to identify some likely candidates. And if you think about it, before LinkedIn, it was very, very difficult to do that kind of advanced search. You know, how would you go looking for project managers all across the UK? You'd be contacting recruitment agencies, you'd be talking to the people that they have on their books, but you might have to deal with 5 or 6 different recruitment agencies. Whereas with an experienced LinkedIn recruitment team in-house, you can contact suitable candidates directly and put the resources into it as well. So this is what we're looking at from the LinkedIn recruiter's perspective. You can see across the top, they've got 9,000 potential candidates that they've searched for previously and saved. 463, or sorry, 201 have got contacts with their own brand. So in somehow the people on their list have already engaged with the company that they're recruiting for, and 27 of those people were past applicants. So this is a fabulous tool for the recruiter. I think it's just helpful just to be able to see it from their perspective and seeing what they're looking for. And this is the type of thing that you would do as a recruiter. You've identified some suitable candidates and you reach out just through LinkedIn messaging. And again, you're probably not sending to individualized messages. It's probably a cut and paste. You're sending to all your contacts, and you've done it through Microsoft messaging. And it's a really interesting, informal way of creating those contacts. And again, we probably don't have an alternative outside of the social media for being able to do that so quickly and so efficiently. And so again, you've done a search as a recruiter for a marketing manager, and again, you could use the filtered search to, you know, Microsoft marketing manager from fast-moving consumer goods background, and has worked outside the UK. And you can do that filter, and you end up with a list that looks something like this. And then you can send them an email. You can ask for a review, so you can ask to get in touch, or you've already contacted them and you can view the messages that you've got in contact with them. And so this creates a dashboard for your role that you're recruiting towards. You can see the suitable candidates that have come down through LinkedIn Recruiter, and you can see where you're up to them with discussions, or how far the discussions have progressed with those individual candidates. And again, similar example, and again, a very, very general introduction, somebody who's just cold calling basically a potential candidate. You've identified their job description and they're suitable, and you just contact them as a cold call. So obviously it's a wonderful tool for recruiters, but it does mean that you will occasionally get contacted by people you don't wish to get contacted by. So some of those will be data scrapers, some of those will be people wishing to sell you services, people wishing to sell you job recruitment activities. So it's important for you to remember that you keep yourself safe and secure when using LinkedIn, and you're comfortable using it as well. So always have a look at your profile settings and information. Check to see what you're sharing. If you're in doubt, have a friend look at your LinkedIn profile to see what information they can find that's available to them. Think about subscriptions and payments. As we mentioned earlier on, there's really no need to pay for LinkedIn Premium, but occasionally you might take advantage of a free use of LinkedIn Premium, and then after a month or whatever, a payment kicks in. So make sure that you manage that and manage your bank details as well carefully. Suitable photo. Making sure that you block or you unfollow connections. So if people are contacting you and are not communicating with you professionally, or you're uncomfortable with anything they're posting, or they're just being a pest. So you might occasionally get unprofessional recruitment agencies who are continually contacting you. Just make sure you unfollow, make sure you block them as you would with any other social media. Um, and make sure you're on top of your advertising preferences as well. So basically what you would do with any form of social media, you just need to do it with LinkedIn. But sometimes it can be a bit more challenging with LinkedIn because you're using this to progress your career, and it's not always a case of who you might like or not like. So if it's your own personal social media, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, you just don't like somebody, you just disconnect from them. But it's not always as easy at LinkedIn because you might be dealing with people who might be beneficial for your careers, but you wouldn't want necessarily to have a social connection with them. So it's important how you manage those relationships online. So we talked in the first workshop about creating your profile, thinking about opening up to your network, thinking about creating a supportive network for you as you develop your career. So we're going to spend some time thinking about how you go about connecting with people and networking once you have set up those connections. So very basically, people in your network are called connections, and you'll see there we've got first degree, second degree, and third degree connections. So the first degree are the people that you'll be most familiar with. Those are people that will have reached out to you to connect, or you'll have reached out to them to connect. You'll have had your reasons for reaching out to them. They'll have the reasons for reaching out to you. The majority of my connections are Lancaster University alumni. I've connected with some of them. They might have connected with me while they were a student, and the connection has continued. Or I've been looking for connections with a particular company, and I've reached out to, I've done a Google search, or sorry, a LinkedIn search, and I found alumni who are working with the particular company, and I've contacted them, given a reason for it, and asked them to connect because I want to know more about their company, or I want to introduce them to a student who's wanting to apply to their company. Once you've reached out to somebody and connected, you'll then start to see second degree connections. So if I reach out to an alumna who's working at Unilever, I might also then start to see their posts, or I'll be able to see their connections. If I went looking for somebody in Unilever, I would find all of that alumni's connections in Unilever, even though they're not a connection of mine, they're a connection of hers. But then gives me the opportunity to connect them and say, I notice you're a connection of whatever the person's name was. I'd really like to connect. And then people connected to your second degree connections, it gets very, very random after that. So your first degree connections are, I would say, solid connections. Your second degree connections, less so, but you do have a direct connection. But once it's into third degree connections, it's very, very random and often hard to make a connection with them. So the focus should be on your first degree connections, and then to a lesser extent, your second degree connections. So you go to an employer-led event, you meet somebody from Deloitte, and instead of giving a business card, they said to you, please connect with me on LinkedIn. They tell you, you find out their surname, family name, and then you can connect with them on LinkedIn. And so the easiest way to do that is then you go back to your laptop or on your phone and you check out the person, their name, and the company. You find their profile, and there's a connect button. Now, I would always suggest that when you want to connect with somebody who you've just met, that you also include a message. Now that message can be really short. It could just be, hi, really nice to meet you at the careers fair earlier on today. Looking forward to connecting with you. Best wishes, and then you send the invite. It just shows that you've taken a little bit of time made a little bit of effort to think about the message and made it clear to them where the connection was from, because that helps as well, place you in the discussion. It's about building rapport. So, maybe you want to remind them of something that you talked about when you met them. But as always, use the 5 Ps: be polite, pertinent, personalized, professional, and pocket-sized. And the pocket-sized, again, is important. So don't write them a letter, just a short paragraph, less than a paragraph, introducing yourself, keeping it professional, and asking for them to connect. And the majority of people will connect. I will always connect with somebody who sends me a message, unless I think it's something very suspect, something very dodgy. But often, if somebody sends me a connection and without sending a message, and I can't make the connection with them in my head immediately, I won't connect with them. So always a good idea to think about the message that you send, but also that's another good reason for having your LinkedIn profile up to date with appropriate photo, career objective, etc. Because if I don't know who somebody is, I might check their LinkedIn profile and then I may or may not connect with them. So important to send a message, keep it professional, keep it short, and remind them where you met. So typical message, as I mentioned, you met somebody at an event, want to connect, and that's all you need to send. And as I said, things like careers fairs and workshops that employers might deliver are obvious places where you come in contact with them. But good to remind them, because if you're talking to graduate recruiters, they may have been traveling around all the universities in the north of England for a week, and they won't necessarily remember you 3 or 4 days later. So good to give them a reminder of where they've got in contact with you. So I mentioned about accepting a LinkedIn invite and thinking about how you'd want to go ahead and do this. So you remember when we talked in the first workshop, we talked about what is your LinkedIn goal? So are you looking specifically to develop your network in a particular area? So say, for instance, you're an economics student. Do you just want to develop your community based around economics? Potential graduate job opportunities, potential people working in the sector, maybe interesting academics in the sector, or are you just interested in building up your wider professional, wider network? And so thinking about that will help you decide whether you accept the LinkedIn invite. As I mentioned earlier on, if I don't know the person and they haven't sent a personalized invite, I'll be more reluctant to connect with them. I might go and have a look at their page, their LinkedIn profile, and the question there is, the first question is the account professional? If the account is professional, I might not bother with asking if it was a sales request or if it was good for my career. I tend to ignore sales requests. You get quite a lot of those, and you get also a lot of people who are ask you to join particular networks, which end up being sales requests. So you need to have a look at them in a bit more depth. But certainly I'd want to see the account was professional, because you have to remember as well that once they become your connection, they're everybody on your team's connection is what their second connection. So they will be your direct connections, your first connections will be able to see some of those accounts. And that's about your reputation, it's about your brand. So you want to ensure that it is a professional account and nothing that's going to reflect badly on you. And recently there has been a kind of blurring of the lines between social media, very, very social media like Facebook or Instagram, and Twitter and LinkedIn. Some people are now posting material on LinkedIn that some of us would think was more suitable for Facebook, or more suitable for Twitter. And again, that depends on what your wider goal is. So if you're thinking specifically about using LinkedIn to develop your career, maybe you'd be a bit more reticent about some of the connections you make, depending on what type of material they're posting on LinkedIn. So this is the thinking behind whether you would accept an invitation from somebody. If you know the person, that's entirely up to you. It's probably quite easy to accept, but if they don't, you might want to consider these various questions before you accept. The key one in there, I think, is this account professional? If you're unsure, the key one is this account professional? You know, even if it's not good for your immediately for your career, it's another connection, and I'm sure, you know, some interesting connections will come of it. If it's a sales request, you will get the occasional direct message, which might be just hassle. But if the account isn't professional, it can be an indicator that it's not good to connect. And as I said, it would reflect on you. So I think that's the key question. So there is an alumni tool connected with LinkedIn, and this is one of the best ways of developing your network. So you can follow Lancaster University's LinkedIn alumni tool, and you'll be able to see everybody who's following Lancaster University on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to connect with them. And as you can see, there's a wonderful search engine then available. So as you can see, there's about 100,000 alumni, and you could search alumni, for instance, by company, by title, by keyword. So for instance, you could go on there if you had a job interview with BAE Systems, you could go on there and you could search for BAE Systems, and you would find all the alumni who've gone, you know, who are either working with them or have gone on to have worked with them previously. So this is a really good, gentle way of starting your networking and your connections, because as you all know, alumni tend to be very, very supportive of the university and the school. So if you were using the alumni profile, this would be a good example of the connecting etiquette you would use. Mention that you're a student at Lancaster, maybe mention to them that, you know, you saw that they were an alumni of Lancaster, and asking for them support. Sometimes you might have a specific question you want to ask, so you could include that in the request if it was just going to be a one-off question. But I would usually wait and just say, I have something along the lines of, I have a couple of questions about the organization. I was just wondering if you could help. It should only take 5-10 minutes of your time or something like this. And sometimes those conversations will develop into calls. Sometimes it'll just all remain on LinkedIn chat. And sometimes it'll move on to meeting people for a cup of coffee, as a lot of our students do, who might say, well, I'm coming to London next week to visit your company. Would you have time for a coffee to meet up to discuss my application or to offer some advice? So as I said, the alumni tool is a really, really good tool to use. So we mentioned about the alumni. That's just an example of an alumni group. There are lots of different groups available that you could join. And you can join up to, as it says, 100 groups. But you already know that when you're joining up to the groups, that you're joining up with people who already share an interest with you. So it's possible, it's not so much a cold call anymore, because you know that they're probably going to be interested in the thing that you wish to discuss. So joining these groups is a really good idea. And again, it's a soft introduction to making those connections and to building your network. So thinking about building your brand, then, if that's where you're going to go with all this, you've made the connections, you've started to get the numbers, you've got 50 connections, you've got 100 connections. Again, thinking back to where we started about is, what's the primary purpose of using LinkedIn? And once you've decided what the primary purpose is how do you build your brand to achieve that particular aim or that particular goal? So this is one of my colleagues in careers. Hannah. Her interest with her LinkedIn is around careers and technology. Um, this is her starting point, that she's got her network across the top. So this is Hannah's network that she could use. Um, she follows a news thread here. There's a highlighting the relevant courses you could have here. But over here, she can see who's viewed her profile and who's viewed her particular post that she's recently posted. So straight away, you're giving some idea of the type of things that Hannah is interested in, and the type of activities that she posts about. So how do you build up that community then? So how do you build up your numbers, as it were? How do you make connections? Well, the first thing is you read somebody's post and you can just press the like button as you would on most social medias. The second option would be to like and comment on the post, or to reshare it. Again, you're taking a post, it's really interesting, you like it, you comment on it, other people might like your comments like they would on any other social media, and then you might reshare the tweet, reshare the post, because it might be of interest to your wider network as well. And so think about the things that you're reading on LinkedIn, whether they would be of interest to your particular network and whether they might actually help you. So it might be something really interesting that would support an application you've just put in, or you know that some of your connections are particularly interested in tech developments and it's a really good story about technology. So think about things that you might share, you might post, and post with a comment. So you can share it and then put a comment above the share as well, giving your thoughts on it, your interpretation of it. It's about developing your relationships, but also for those people who might not necessarily be very, very good at face-to-face networking, in-person networking, this is a really good way of just stretching yourself a little bit. So taking somebody else's post, liking it, commenting on it, resharing it with your own interpretation, this starts to create your brand and your profile as well. So it's a really kind of gentle way of starting to network without actually having to interact with people in too much detail. So it's important as well to think about why we network and why we're using LinkedIn. So I think it's always important to help others. So if a friend of mine posts something to do with their work, or they've got a vacancy in their team and they post a vacancy on LinkedIn, I would always reshare it. It's just a good thing to do. Just even liking comments, sharing comments, resharing comments yourself helps to boost the reach of the post. I think it's a really nice way of increasing your network. And like most things, if you share people's posts, you comment on people's posts, they will do the same for you. And again, that's enhancing your network. And it's also just a nice thing to do. You know, somebody gets a new job, just wish them congratulations and best of luck. Somebody's got a promotion, the same thing. Somebody's making a job change, or a sector change, or moving towns, moving countries, whatever it might be. All just an opportunity that you would probably do in any other form of social media if they posted, offer them that guidance. One difference with LinkedIn is that people in the workspace on LinkedIn will often ask for people's advice. So again, work-related issues, people will often post, whether it's a technical issue, whether it's a staff management issue, whether it's dealing with a difficult colleague or a difficult manager. People will often post questions on LinkedIn. And it's a space for you, again, when you think about developing your brand, offering your advice and guidance of a particular sort to those people who are seeking that support. So again, be a little bit careful about what you say on LinkedIn and how you advise them, because obviously it gets shared and gets shared very easily. But it is good if you can help people at all. As the slide said, if you can pay it forward at all, you should definitely do so. So, okay, so you're sharing content from other people, you're liking content from other people, you're commenting on content from other people. That's starting to get your brand developed, starting to get your persona online developed. But start thinking then about um, your own profile and creating your own content. So there are a number of different ways of that. The one that I'd recommend the most is just a short form post, which you just click on the pen icon and share a new post. It could be that you got a new job. It could be a reaction to a news story. It could be a great event that you attended. Any of those things, share a story, share a report, share a video or a photo, and just post it on your profile. Very easy. Take your time, pay attention to spelling and grammar as you would with anything else. You can go back and edit it if you like later on, but remember, when you post it out there, it is public. A slightly more in-depth one would be to write an article on a particular subject. Again, it might be something to do with the sector you're working in. It might be to do with a news story in your sector. If you're an academic, it might be just a quick snapshot of a paper you just have published, and its relevance maybe to your network. As I said, always add videos and photos. It kind of livens up all the posts. And if you wanted to create your own video, you can post a video as a conversation piece. Using a smartphone is always a good idea rather than trying to do anything too polished. But just remember that lots of people in shared offices, etc., don't wear headphones, so they sometimes skip over the videos. So keep it nice and short, because most people don't want to sit down and listen to a 5-minute video in the middle of an open plan office unless it's directly work connected. But these are just various ways in which you might want to start creating content that will be of interest to your network and will also help develop your brand. So a couple of ways in which you could boost engagement from your posts. So I've taken 3 colleagues' LinkedIn posts just to talk you through, to give you examples. So Radka here on the screen is one of our academic colleagues in LUMS. So she's thinking about how she boosts engagement for her post. So it's a very short post about an event at the castle, as you can see in the background. It was very celebratory in nature. She's tagged in Lancaster City Council, LUMS, Ian Steele, who has Atkinson's Cafe at the university, Tony Johnson, who's a senior guy at Lancaster City Council. She's tagged them in. She's got some great photos of some students. She won't probably have tagged all the students, but all the students will have liked the photo and liked her post. So it's about creating that kind of engagement, using the hashtags because of an entrepreneurial event. So hashtags, photos, tagging people in it, and some good photos and videos if possible. That's a great way of boosting engagement, because it's unlikely that anybody who's featured in those photos is not going to like your post, because they probably all follow Radka in the first place already. Here's another interesting one that my colleague Matthew used. So this was about his experience in China. Talked about global experiences, talked about Beijing, talked about Lancaster University, posted some great photos, used the tags as well. So having a similar impact as well, doing the same things, trying to boost that engagement. And as you can see down the bottom, at that stage, it had 122 likes and 4 comments from people already. So thinking about building your LinkedIn brand, going back to this. So remember, LinkedIn is a community. So it's about supporting each other. It's about connecting each other. It's being aware of what's going on around you and thinking about developments within your own community. think about your point of view and tone. Be authentic. So think about why you want to use LinkedIn. So it's possible that you have one tone on LinkedIn and another tone on Instagram, but your point of view should probably be similar. You might be talking about slightly different things, but and your tone will be different, but do be authentic. Um, if people aren't being authentic, it can very easily be seen on LinkedIn. It comes across not so well. Build relationships. Again, any form of social media, but think about how the relationships you want to build will support whatever your aim is. And remember, we talked about what your aim of using LinkedIn was. You can add content to your portfolio. So as you go along, people will be able to see, to go back and have a look at your various posts. And hopefully they will see some consistency in the type of things that you post. So for instance, I mainly post about work things. I repost, I share, I occasionally post, but it's mainly about work things. You'd pick up very little about my personal life through my LinkedIn profile, and that's a deliberate decision on my behalf. If I was on Instagram, you'd see a lot more about my personal life, but on LinkedIn, I keep it very, very tied down where possible to my work life. And that's entirely your choice, but you might find it easier if you're using LinkedIn for develop your career profile that you actually keep it careers related and work related. Add value, not noise. So we'll all be familiar on social media with threads that go on and on and on because people just insist on repeating what somebody above them had said. If you've got nothing new to add on a post, don't say it. Just like the post and move on. Always think about adding value and not noise to anything and that's good advice for all social media, but it's particularly good for LinkedIn. And again, as you go along, evaluate against your LinkedIn plan. What am I hoping to achieve here? Maybe your intention is to use LinkedIn to get a graduate job, to get a new job, to move to a different company. Always review what you're doing on LinkedIn to think about if it matches up about your LinkedIn plan. And if the activity that you're posting on LinkedIn, that you're sharing on LinkedIn, that you're liking on LinkedIn, fits in with those aims, fits in with those plans. So, some key tools for job searches using LinkedIn. So think about building up your connections. Think about the search terms that you would use. Think about the roles and sectors that you're interested in. And think about how you would search and how you would do active searches. So you can tell recruiters that you're actively looking for opportunities. There's a button on the profile that you can have on to tell people that you're looking for opportunities. I often have it switched on. I'm not really looking for another role, but it's always interesting to find out what's available there. And occasionally you come across some interesting opportunities, or recruiters will get in touch with you with some interesting opportunities by having that button on. Think about what you're looking for when you're searching. So the example we use there is for placement years, but remember that there might be 5 or 6 different variations on a placement year. So make sure that you don't narrow down your search too much. Try to be a bit specific, because if you just, for instance, if you do a search for graduate roles, that's going to be very, very broad and you'll get hundreds of thousands of options. But maybe graduate roles and FMCG or banking or whatever, just to narrow it down a little bit so you're getting stuff that's relevant to your own particular job search. This is how you can apply on LinkedIn. So when recruiters are advertising for roles, you see on the job search, you come across roles that look a little bit like this. This is how it would look like on LinkedIn. So the e-commerce graduate brand specialist at Manchester. Now they've given you two options on how to apply. So if you've got usually if you've got premium, you can definitely use both, but usually you can use both. So if you click the apply button that's there, it will probably just take you to Amazon's website, or maybe to a link on the Amazon's website to that particular role. If you click the easy apply button, it usually just asks you immediately to upload a CV and cover letter, so that if you're prepared, you could probably apply within half an hour. And it's a really good way to think about which type of roles you want to apply. Now, there is a temptation there sometimes to use the easy apply and to apply for lots of different roles. Like we would advise with all job searches, you need to be a little bit strategic and only apply for roles that you're really interested in. Because otherwise you could be inundated with employers getting in touch with you for roles that you're not fully committed to. But there, the easy apply button is a really good way. If you see a job that's of interest to you, you can apply within 10 minutes. Some people might ask you to post a video interview. So obviously video interviews are becoming much more common these days. But as part of the recruitment process on LinkedIn, they might ask you to update a video interview. Now, you can see the list of questions that are run down the side. You might be able to record a video, or sometimes they will do the interview online, just answering the questions. And like any other videos, we have the opportunity for you here at the university to practice those video interviews. You can use either Shortlist Me, or we have a video interview simulator on the jobs portal. So if you go to the interview section on the careers jobs portal, or the careers advice portal, you'll be able to practice doing a video interview as well. And that is something that's worth practicing before you engage with employers. You'll be able to see the salary that's available to people there. Again, this is probably of more use to people who are looking for experienced higher roles rather than graduate jobs, because the graduate jobs will have fixed salary schemes and they're not open to negotiation. But for experienced hires, it's always nice to be able to see what the average salary is that you might want to, if you were being asked to pitch a salary or suggest a salary, that you'd be able to see it using the LinkedIn jobs salary function. Again, recruiters often share updates. Always recruit, always connect, always keep in touch. And even if it's just a case of, if you're not interested in applying for a role, maybe sharing with your network. So if you're an accounting student, for instance, and you have a graduate role sorted, but you see that people in Mazars are sharing or hiring, you might want to share that in your network. And again, that will build up your network really well. A really good tool, a relatively recent tool on LinkedIn is the development of company profiles. So most companies will now have a presence on LinkedIn, that you'll be able to follow connections who work there. You'll be able to gain some insight into their recent posts and recent news. So if you're thinking about, well, what would be a good news story to learn about Deloitte prior to an interview, their LinkedIn profile is probably a better place to go than their website, because their LinkedIn profile is definitely going to be up to date. So you can get a really good insight into the organization and also see what other vacancies they might be advertising as well. So finally, I would say take time to reflect on your LinkedIn plan. So what are you hoping to achieve by using LinkedIn? Is it for gaining insights? Are you looking for support for job search? Or is it friendly networking? Aim to be part of the community. To be part of the community, you need to contribute, you need to post, you need to share, you need to support each other. So think about how you are going to do that. So how are you going to build that strong personal brand? And I would say you do that by publishing regular, engaging, bespoke content, and interacting with your connections will eventually give you a strong personal brand. And then you need to reflect, occasionally as to how that's in keeping with your LinkedIn plan. And your LinkedIn plan will change over time. Once you get a graduate job, you're looking for a different type of role. The next time you might want to create a slightly different persona, a slightly different brand, but that's for you to work out and to figure out. So I'm going to stop sharing. We do have a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions. You can post in the chat, or if somebody wants to put their hand up, either or. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sylvia, for that comment. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for coming along today. I hope you found that session useful. We will be recording this, of course, and you will get access to the recording. Please do start to develop your LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn persona. Start reaching out to people, connecting, send the right messages when you are connecting. And as I keep on saying, occasionally review your LinkedIn plan and whether what you're doing on LinkedIn is in keeping with what you're trying to achieve. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.